I'm Charlene Lucas. I'm a registered psychologist and an organizational behavior consultant and trauma therapist. So, particularly, I'm going to discuss how to survive or how to heal. What are the steps or particularly the journey for surviving trauma and abuse? Okay. So, but first, no, what is trauma? Okay, so trauma is there's a lot of I would say there's a lot of spectrum in terms of trauma. So trauma is not only registered on the mind, it's registered on the body as well. So trauma, it's anything that is life threatening. Okay, so it's traumatic. All right, and at the same time, it could also be an overwhelming experience or overwhelming, let's say, events in our lives that causes us trauma. So there's a lot of, I would say, there's a lot of levels in terms of trauma. So we have, let's say, small t, we have big T. Of course, it also depends on the person on how are they handling trauma, okay, or how are they handling, let's say, the impact of the events that causes trauma. Okay, so of course there's a lot of events as well that causes trauma. It's not just only abuse, but there's also, let's say, calamities. There's also, I would say, war. So but anything that is, let's say, not only just life threatening but overwhelming. It's like you can never expect a human that will do that to a human being, something like that. Okay, so but I'm gonna focus particularly on abuse, okay, because there are also cases, or there are also, let's say, instances that the abuse could lead into trauma. Of course, there's two in DSM 5, or in the Bible, in or our Bible, as I say, in mental health, there are two um there are two disorders in terms of trauma. There is post-traumatic stress disorder and there's acute stress disorder. But I'm not gonna dwell on that. I'm gonna dwell on what is abuse, and how an abuse can cause trauma, or what are the manifestations and symptoms of trauma in terms of abuse. Okay, so trauma can persist up to 30 years or more. Trauma survivors have symptoms instead of memories. So in terms of trauma, okay, so as what I've said earlier, trauma is not only registered on the mind, it's registered on the body as well. So there's a saying that the body remembers. So most of the time, women or people who were abused, who were, let's say, not only just physical abuse or sexually abused, but also emotional, verbal, all right, or mentally abused by people around them. Okay, so sometimes they're having a hard time. Okay, they're having a hard time surviving that, or let's say getting over that, because it's registered on the body. So it's like, if they hear, let's say, words, let's say foul words, let's say loud shouts, or loud, let's say, anything that associates with their trauma. Sometimes they get scared, even if it's not to them. Okay, so that's what the saying goes, that trauma is not only registered on the mind, it's registered on the body as well. Okay, so now, why is this happening to me and where is this coming from? So these two questions is most of my clients is asking me. Okay, so they don't know, they thought that they get over it. For example, if they had, let's say, childhood abuse, they thought that they already get over it. They thought that it was in the past. I'm already 30 years old now. I'm already 50 years old now. But the thing is, they still don't know why the symptoms, or why the manifestation is still lingering on them. So they don't know, okay, so why is this, why am I having this kind of manifestation sometime, when I'm just having this kind of problem. For example, when they were, yes, 20 years old, and they are very stressed at work. All right, so most of the time they can bounce back at that, or they can bounce back. All right, so but the thing is, come when they're 30s, 40s, and there are a lot of things that's happening in their life. So now they are having a hard time in just simple stress of work. And sometimes they snap easily, when on their kids, on their spouse, on their partners, even it's just small things. All right. And then where is this coming from? Most of the time, people who are suffering from trauma has this, let's say, comorbidity. Comorbidity not only in terms of trauma but also depression and anxiety. So they don't know why are they being anxious to things, to small things, or why are they easily get depressed when life gets rough. All right. So of course, pain is inevitable in life, but suffering is optional. But the thing is, there people who are suffering from trauma, they're having a hard time bouncing back again, and they're always asking like, before I want to get back in my old self, before I can easily cope, but right now I'm having a hard time coping because the events in their life, the past, they haven't really healed from their past, and now it's catching up to them. Okay, so what are the forms of abuse? Okay, so the forms of abuse, I classify it as five: emotional, verbal, mental, all right, as well as physical and sexual. Of course, syempre, when it comes to big T, no, or big trauma, so I would say it falls under sexual and physical abuse, especially if it is repeated. It can cause PTSD or post-traumatic stress disorder. So when it comes, what is verbal? Of course, verbal is like people shouting at you, saying foul words at you. Okay, so saying demeaning things at you. So those are verbal abuse. So what about mental abuse? This is a form of gaslighting. It's like you're questioning already your thought. It's like there are some people who are, let's say, you know you are right, but they're telling you that you are wrong. And then now you're questioning your thoughts. Am I really wrong? All right. Or they are just gaslighting me. Now, when it comes to emotional abuse, this usually happens not only in the family, but also in partners as well. For example, the man, let's say, wants to have sex with the woman. So, but the woman doesn't want to have sex with the man, with their partner. So the partner is saying to the women, or to their girlfriends, like, so if you don't love me because you don't want to have sex with me. So it's like you're already and then the guy is withholding the love to the women. So it seems like, okay, so I cannot be, let's say, I cannot say no. All right, so I don't have, let's say, the right to say no if I want to give myself or not. So that's also a form of emotional abuse. Okay, so they are using the love or the relationship just to get what they want, even if the other party doesn't want to. All right. So, am I being abused or suffering from trauma? Okay. So, number one for this is, if you're already questioning your, I would say, if you're already questioning your decision, if you're already questioning your world, if you're already questioning, let's say, things like you don't question before, so maybe it's time for you to take a look in the relationship. Or of course, when it comes to physical and sexual, of course, it's already a form of abuse. Now, or are you suffering from trauma? So if you already have symptoms or manifestations, that is, let's say, like the question earlier before, is where is this coming from? Or why am I getting afraid for things that I'm usually not afraid of? So why am I getting afraid for, let's say, let's say, for when you're in your childhood, your parents is usually shouting at you, yelling at you, and then right now, when you hear somebody, even if it's not directed to you, it's yelling and shouting. It's like, why am I getting scared? All right. So why am I being so anxious, or to the point of you're having a panic attack? All right. So, but the thing is, it's not directed to you. So it could be, let's say, you're already suffering from trauma, or you're already manifesting the symptoms of trauma. Now, how do I get out in an abusive relationship? Okay, so number one, okay, so I always tell to my clients that you can never heal in an environment that you got sick in. Okay, so if you want to get out of an abusive relationship, first you need to get out of that place. You need to get out of that person. All right, so even if it is your family, you need to set healthy boundaries, because you will still be triggered. You will gonna keep wounded, or the wound that's gonna get deeper if your abuser is still abusing you. Okay, so first and foremost, you need to get out of that environment. If you're having a hard time getting out of the environment, try as much as possible to set healthy boundaries with that person. Setting healthy boundaries, meaning, this is the number two question, is how should I defend or protect myself? Try na as much as possible not to let that negativity or the abuse get in. Now, how are you going to do that? First and foremost, you need to tell to that person that you were hurt. Okay. Now, if the person is, let's say, emotionally abusing you, or let's say mentally abusing you, try to make a stand. Okay, so try to tell to that person that I'm hurt. Okay, but don't expect, or don't let's say, or ask that person to understand you, because expectations will lead to frustrations. Just tell to the person that I'm being hurt, and try to distance yourself to that person as much as possible. Okay, because an abuser will abuse if they can abuse, but as much as possible, not to live with that person in the same roof, and get out of that relationship, because the cycle will just repeat itself and the wound will just get deeper. Okay, and then what help should I seek? Okay, so first and foremost, trauma is a bit hard, okay, to just, let's say, naturally get over with. Okay, especially in all stages of our life, we have crisis. So there are times that the events in our life, or the negative events of our life, are piling up. So if you haven't dealt or processed, or healed with your past, it's gonna catch up. Okay, to the point that you don't know where it's coming from. You don't know, why am I being afraid for just small things? Okay, so for just simple things, I'm getting afraid, I'm getting anxious, I'm getting depressed. Okay, so there's a right process, on that, and there is a right approach on that, especially if it is involving physical and sexual abuse. Okay, so how can I get out of the negative cycle and pattern? First and foremost, as what I've said, is to get out first in the abusive relationship, if you're still there. Okay, but if you're already out of it, okay, so number one is seek help. Okay, so to right professionals who are dealing with trauma, who knows, let's say, how to desensitize or how to neutralize trauma. Because as what I've said earlier, trauma is not only registered on the mind, it's registered on the body as well. So now, first and foremost is, if you're already out in the relationship, I always advise to my clients that to focus yourself at the moment. Be mindful. All right, so be mindful of, let's say, the things that you're doing. Okay, so are you displacing, or are you projecting your issues to other people? Because most of the person, or most of the people who are, let's say, manifesting trauma, is there, it's either flight or fight or freeze mode. Okay, so is they're gonna go away if the things really get, I would say, too much for them, even if it's just small things. They will fight, even if there's, let's say, just small petty things. They're in an aggressive mode, or they will freeze. They will slaughter. They don't know what they're going to do. So those three, no. And also, the manifestations of a person who is suffering from trauma, it's either they're gonna hurt themselves, or they're gonna hurt their other. Okay, so it's either the let's say that the hurt. Okay, so they're the self-worth, the low self-worth. Okay, so it's my fault. All right, they're gonna hurt themselves, and to the point that sometimes they're committing suicide, or they're gonna hurt other people. Okay, so they're gonna displace all their hurts, all their frustrations, all their, let's say, pain to other people who is not necessarily cause, or who did not even cause them pain. Okay, So healing starts when you finally decided you needed to change, and change starts when you finally decided you needed peace. So number one, healing starts within you. Okay, so healing, all right, should come from within. Okay, it's not just because somebody told you, all right, somebody encouraged you. Healing should start from within, because if you really want to heal trauma, if you want to have that peace of mind, number one is you really need to be, or you really need to face your fears head on. Okay, because most of the traumatic events, or let's say most of the issues that we deal in trauma, is those events in your life or negative events in your lives that you don't want to remember anymore. But when we heal trauma, okay, or we neutralize trauma, we need to face that. Okay, you have to be brave enough to face that so that you can move on. All right. So it's like the story of Hydra. So what is the story of Hydra? So instead of cutting the head, all right. So cutting the head of the Hydra is like it's a mythical creature that has this body and then a lot of head. Now once you cut the head, it will grow into two or three heads. All right. So meaning even if you try to avoid trauma, if you try to avoid it, okay, so it will grow and it will grow. Okay, so you thought that you can forget a memory. There's no such thing as forgetting a memory. So if you cut, so for you to beat trauma, you need to really destroy the body. So destroy the event, neutralize it, face it, all right, so that you can have this, let's say, this realization or this insight that it's all in the past. Okay, it's part of your past. You are not defined by your past. Okay, so be brave enough to follow your heart, as life is too short to be constantly living in fear. So people who are suffering from trauma is constantly living in fear. So they are always afraid. All right. So they are always, let's say, guarded, walled up, or it's either they have this insatiable longing, okay, to be loved. All right. So to the point that they're getting themselves into wrong relationships, and they're getting themselves into cycle of failures of relationship, cycle of abusive relationship, to the point that the wound is getting deeper and deeper, and they don't know how to get out of that cycle rather. Okay, and never let your past define you. You are worthy, you are deserving, and you are now in control. So I always tell to my client that whatever your past is, you are not defined by that. Okay, so as long as you're willing to change, as long as you want to stop committing that same mistake over and over again, then uh, I would say that your past, okay, it's something that is your history, and history now. Okay, so you are not defined by your past, but you are what you choose to become. Okay, so of course we all have past, we all have, let's say, things that we wish we wish we did it didn't happen, it wasn't happen to us. Okay, we didn't do, but the most important is you're healing from that, you're growing from that, and you are in control of your life. So I always also tell to my clients that your life is your main responsibility. No one will save you. Okay, so from that hole that you're in, from that negative pattern that you're in, that you keep repeating, telling your mind, until such time that you seek help. All right, so proper help, professional help, for you to recover, for you to heal, and to have that acceptance and forgiveness in your heart. Okay, and then of course once you're healed, or once you already, let's say, neutralize the trauma, okay, so after undergoing the therapy, of course forgiveness is up to you to work on. All right, so it may take years, it might take decades, it's up to you, but the most important is you're working towards forgiveness. Okay, and then once you get out of that, so use your flame to give light to darkness, and use your pain to give hope to those in despair. So usually people who suffered from trauma or abuse, once they healed from that, I would say they neutralize their trauma. It's not controlling them anymore. Usually they give hope to people. most of the time they give, let's say, blessing to other people. They're turning their pain into a blessing. They're finding meaning amidst those suffering. And that's the beautiful thing about recovering from trauma. Okay, recovering from abuse. That's because you will be having this insight, this clarity in your mind. Okay, so I'm not defined by my past, so I can still do more. I'm not afraid anymore, and I'm gonna reach out to people, because if you really understand your pain, you don't want others to feel the same. Okay, and of course, be a blessing and hope. Your light can be someone's guide who is trying to survive. So be a blessing. So all of us, okay, so are in pain. All of us is undergoing something, but it doesn't mean we cannot grow, we cannot learn, and we cannot find the peace that we deserve. Right?